Welcome to my video on adding and subtracting decimals. Today we're going to go over how to add and subtract decimals correctly by lining up the place values and the decimal number. Adding and subtracting decimals is really just like adding and subtracting whole numbers. So I want to start by going over how we really add and subtract whole numbers. When we add or subtract a number, we line up place values because that lines up the true value of the digit. For example, the number 5,612 really has a value of 5,000 plus 600 plus 10 plus 2. I've written this number in expanded form to show you that each digit has a value. So the 5 really has a value of 5,000 because it's in the thousands place value. The 6 really has a value of 600 because it's in the hundreds place value. The 1 has a value of 10 because it's in the tens place value, and the 2 really does have a value of 2 because it's in the ones place value. If we were to add or subtract a number from 5,612, we would have to add or subtract the thousands from the thousands, the hundreds from the hundreds, the tens from the tens, and the ones from the ones. Otherwise, we would get an incorrect value. Let's look at this in a little bit more in depth. So I've taken our number 5,612 and I'm going to add to that a number of 1,074. You'll notice that when I do this, I've lined up the place values. So the thousands are together. The 5 is above the 1 and those are in the thousands place value. So that's lined up correctly. The 6 in the hundreds place is above the 0. And you'll notice that the 0 represents no value in the hundreds place in 1,074. And then I've lined up the 1 and the 7 in the tens place and the 2 and the 4 in the ones place. Now that I have place values lined up, I can add and get the correct answer. If I add these together, I would get an answer of 6,686. Let's look at the same thing but in expanded form. If I took the number 5,612 and I change it into expanded form to show its true value for each digit, it would be 5,000 plus 600 plus 10 plus 2, as we discussed in the previous slide. But now I'm going to change my number 1,074 into expanded form as well, and that would end up being 1,000 plus 0 plus 70 plus 4, because the 1 has a value of 1,000. The 7 is in the tens place, so it has a value of 70, and the 4 is in the ones place, so it has a value of 4. You'll notice that I did write 0, 0, 0 with 3 zeros in for the hundreds place just because there are 3 place values when you go to the hundreds place. You certainly don't have to write 3 zeros if you want. You can just write 1 0 and have it represented just fine. Now if I add them, I get the same answer, but in expanded form. So 5,000 plus 1,000 is 6,000. 600 plus 0 is 600. 10 plus 70 is 80, and 2 plus 4 is 6. So again, we end up with the same answer, 6,686. For the second example, we're going to do subtraction. We're going to take away the number 11,843 from the number 13,925. One more time, I just want to show you that we've lined up the place values correctly. So my ones are in the right place value. Those are represented by 10,000's place value. The 3 and the 1 are in the correct value because the 3 is on top of the 1, and they're both in the thousands place value. The 9 and the 8 are on top of each other or below each other, and they're in the 100 spot. And then we have the 2 and the 4 in the 10 spot, and the 5 and the 3 in the 1 spot. They're all lined up correctly. So that if I do the math, I would get an answer of 2,082. One more time, in expanded form, if I were to write both these numbers out, I would get 10,000 plus 3,000 plus 900 plus 20 plus 5 for the number 13,925. And I would get 10,000 plus 1,000 plus 800 plus 40 plus 3 for the number 11,843. And if I subtract this, then I would get the same answer, but in expanded form. I would get zeros in for the 10,000's place because they cancel each other out. 2,000 for 3,000 minus 1,000. And then you'll notice that I actually have 0 in for the 900 minus the 800 because I have to borrow 100 from the 900 and add that onto the 20. You'll notice that in my 10 spot, 20 is too small. I can't take 40 away from 20. So I've borrowed 100 from the 900. Added it to the 20 to get 120. Now when I do 120 minus 40, I get an answer of 80. And 5 minus 3 is 2. So we come up with the same answer. I just want to illustrate to you what it looks like when you use expanded form, that we're really truly lining up place values. But now you'll see that it's exactly the same when we talk about decimals. So again, the same principle applies to adding and subtracting decimals. We have to line up the numbers according to their place value or we will get the wrong answer. For example, let's look at the number 13 and 256 thousandths. If we wrote it out according to its true value, it would look like this. The 1 has a value of 10, so it would be 10 plus 3 plus 0.2 or 2 tenths plus 0.05 or 5 hundredths plus 0.006 or 6 thousandths. You'll see that my digits in 13 and 256,000 are represented out by their true value. Now again, if we were to add or subtract a number from 13 and 256 thousandths, we would have to line up the place values correctly, just like we did for whole numbers. If we do it correctly, then we will get the right answer. Let's look at a few decimal examples now. Let's take our number 13 and 256 thousandths and add to that 12 and 17 thousandths. Now I've written it out in expanded form just so you can see again what it would look like if we put the values of each number together. So 10 plus 3 plus 2 tenths plus 5 hundredths plus 6 thousandths. We're going to add to that 10 plus 2 plus 0 because there's no value in the tenth spot, plus 1 hundredth plus 7 thousandths. If we do the math and line it up like we normally would, we would have this example below, where if I do the addition, I get 25 and 273 thousandths. You'll notice that my decimal is placed right below the top two decimals, and they are right exactly in a line. When you do your decimal addition or subtraction correctly, this will always be the case. The decimals should always line up. For our second example, we're going to do subtraction. We're going to take away 93 and 71 hundredths from 347 and 82 hundredths. I'm writing them out one more time into expanded form to show you the true value of each digit. So the value of 347 and 82 hundredths in expanded form would be 300 plus 40 plus 7 plus 8 tenths plus 2 hundredths. And 93 and 71 hundredths written down in expanded form would be 0, 0, 0. Again, I put zeros in to match the hundredths place value, but you don't have to do that. Then it would be plus 90 plus 3 plus 7 tenths plus 1 hundredth. You'll see down here below that I've taken our numbers and I've lined them up correctly so the right place values are above the right place values. Now we can subtract, and if we do, we get 254 and 11 hundredths. One more time, you'll notice that our decimals are lined up. Now let me show you what happens if we line our decimals up incorrectly. This is a mistake that kids often make. You'll see that they put the 9, which is in the tens place, in 93 and 710 thousandths. They've put that in the hundreds place value. So the 9 is below the 3. But remember, the 3 really has a value of 300, and the 9 really only has a value of 90. So we can't put the 9 in the hundreds place value because it's not in the hundreds place value. It should be in the tens place value. Also pay close attention to our decimals. You'll see that our decimals are not lined up. And that brings up a question. Where would I put my decimal? Would I put it in the far left spot or in the far right spot? If you ever come across a situation like this, it will tell you one thing all the time. You've lined your place values up incorrectly. You will always get an incorrect answer to this. For one reason, because you don't know where to put your decimal. And for another reason, because you have differing values lined up with each other. So again, the hundreds and the tens are lined up, the tens and the ones are lined up, the ones and the tenths are lined up, and so forth. And so all of our math is going to be incorrect. Fortunately for us, there's a shortcut to decimal addition and subtraction. All we have to do, rather than lining all the place values up, is we can simply line up the decimals, and then all the place values will automatically line up for us. So anytime we have addition or subtraction of decimals, make sure that you line the decimals up. If you do that, you'll notice that all your place values have automatically lined up for you. Let's look at a few examples. If I take 12 and 457 thousandths, and add 3 and 12 hundredths to that, I want to make sure that I've lined my decimals up. If I do that, you'll see that now my place values are also lined up. My decimals one on top of another, and now the 2 and the 3 in the 1 spot are lined up, the 4 and the 1 in the 10th spot are lined up, the 5 and the 2 in the 100th spot are lined up, and the 7 and the 0 in the 1000th spot is lined up. If I do the math, then I'd come up with the answer of 15 and 577 thousandths. For subtraction, it works exactly the same. I want to line my decimals up. So I'm going to line up the decimals in 45 and 627 thousandths with the decimal in 3 and 45 thousandths. Now that I've done this, you'll see that my place values are also lined up. So the 5 and the 3 are in the 1 spot like they should be. The 6 and the 0 are in the 10th spot like they should be. 2 and the 4 are in the 100th spot, and the 7 and the 5 are in the 1000th spot. And this would give us an answer of 42 and 582 thousandths. There are some pitfalls to watch out for when you're using this shortcut method to line up your decimals. The first pitfall to avoid is to watch out for whole numbers without a decimal point. To overcome this, you simply have to add a decimal point in to the back or to the right of the whole number, and then zeros to match it after. So let's look at an example. If I were adding 68 and 52 and 1200ths, you'll notice that there is no decimal in 68 to line up with the 52 and 1200ths. So I can add a decimal in. I'm going to put it at the back or the end of the number, and then write zeros to match it. So I'd write it as 68.00 or 68 and 0 hundredths. Now I can line up my decimals, and it will make my place values also line up. So when I do this, you'll see that my 10s are lined up, so the 6 and 5 are lined up, my 1s are lined up, the 8 and the 2 are lined up, and also I have digits in the tenths and hundredths place value. Now it's very easy to add. Again, I simply need to drop my decimal down into place, keep it in line, and then I can add, and I would come up with 120 and 12 hundredths. The other pitfall to avoid is to watch out for decimal numbers that have no whole number. To overcome this, you can add zeros to the left of the decimal where the whole number should be to match whatever number you're adding or subtracting. So let's look at an example. If I'm going to subtract 21 hundredths from 75 and 68 hundredths, you'll notice that I have no whole numbers on 21 hundredths, but I can add zeros in to match. So I'm going to take 75 and 68 hundredths and subtract off of that 21 hundredths. But you'll notice that I'm able to line my decimals up, and I've put one extra zero in there just to match out to my tenths place value. All that does is make it visually easy to see that you've lined your place values out. Now I can go ahead and subtract like I normally would. I can drop my decimal point straight down, do the subtraction, and I would get 75 and 47 hundredths. Now I want you to try it with 4 different examples. I have 2 addition problems on the left and 2 subtraction problems on the right. Work these out on paper. When you have your answer, unpause the video and we'll go over them together. Pause the video now. Okay, let's go over your answers to see how you did. Let's start in the upper left. We take 52 and 67 hundredths and add to that 8 and 5 hundredths. I want to line my decimals up. As I've done here, that puts my place values in the right spot. Now when I add, I should get 60 and 72 hundredths. For the bottom problem, I have 903 and 7 tenths, and I'm going to add to that 84. This is one of those pitfalls to watch out for because 84 does not have a decimal after it. So I'm going to add a decimal and a 0 to the back of my number 84 so that I can line the decimals up. Now that I've done that, I can easily line my decimals up, and I get an answer of 987 and 7 tenths. Now on to the subtraction problems. The first problem, I'm going to subtract 7 and 8 tenths from 16 and 999 thousandths. I need to line my decimals up, which if I do, puts all the place values in the right spot. I can drop my decimal straight down to my answer line from there and go ahead and do the subtraction. If you do the subtraction correctly, you should get 9 and 199 thousandths. For my last example, I'm going to subtract 301 thousandths from 1,000. This one's really a tricky one because I have a whole number with no decimal in it, and I have a decimal number with no whole numbers in it. But I still have to line up the decimals. To do that, I need to add a decimal again to my whole number at the end or to the right of the 1,000. So I'm going to write it as 1,000.000. And again, I've written out 3 zeros to match my 301 in my other number. Now I can subtract off that my decimal 301 thousandths, and you'll notice to the left I've written in 4 zeros to match my 1,000 or my whole number. Now my decimals are lined up. I can drop my decimal straight down to the answer line and do the subtraction. There's a lot of borrowing in this one, which makes it tricky, but if you were able to do the math correctly, you should have got an answer of 999 and 699 thousandths. 3 things I want you to remember from this video. First, when adding or subtracting decimal numbers, the place values of both numbers have to match. And that's the key, really. You have to make sure that your numbers or digits are in the right place value. If you do, you most likely will get the right answer. Second, to match place values, simply line up the decimal. You don't have to go to a lot of work. Just make your decimals line up and you will probably get the right answer again. And third, watch out for those decimal pitfalls. For whole numbers without a decimal, make sure you add a decimal to the back or to the right of the number and zeros to match whatever decimal number you have. And for decimals without a whole number, you can add zeros to the left of the decimal in the whole number spots that will help you visually see where your decimals need to be lined up. I hope this short video will help you understand how to line up your decimals and line up your place values when adding and subtracting numbers.